And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 75 of the Sling'N podcast. I'm TJ.
And I'm Kent.
And joining us tonight for the first time is Dr. TC Fuller of the Horus Group. TC, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, TC, we like to give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves to the public and the dozens listening at home. TC, why don't you go ahead and explain to us exactly who the hell you are?
Seems fair. Well, I'm a Taurus. I'm originally from California. I like long walks on the beach. Seriously, I grew up in California at a time when you could still actually own guns and say the word gun and not get imprisoned. So I used to, spend a lot of time behind shotguns and 22s as a kid out there. Grew up there, did a year at UC Santa Cruz, go banana slugs. Was invited to pursue my academic career elsewhere after a year. So I moved down to Fresno State, joined Army ROTC, and took off. Finished that up, secured a regular Army commission, went off to be an infantryman, went to Benning and did all the sort of de rigueur schools that one expects of the modern infantry officer, and left there en route to the Berlin Brigade, probably dating myself a little bit there, and landed in Germany just in time to get rerouted and sent down to the Gulf. So I went down there, was a platoon leader for the first time around, spent a few months down in the sandbox watching the Northern Horizon burn, and ended up back in Germany, finished up my time there, bopped around the Army for a little more, ended up as a bomb disposal guy back in the Middle East in the Sinai. Then at Fort Bragg, got out, had an opportunity to get in the FBI, which I took, not ever thinking they would hire me because I always was of the opinion the FBI hired adults. But shockingly, I kept passing the tests and I got in. I was fortunate enough to do that for 20 years. I asked to go to San Francisco to get back home to California. So they sent me to Vermont. Spent a decade up there. And then ended up spent some time teaching at the firearms instruction unit down at the firearms training unit, at Quantico at our academy, and did some time in the Office of Congressional Affairs up at FBI headquarters, and then finished up my time in the Charlotte division of the FBI. Retired a few years ago, and now I run my own security consulting and training company, do some writing, do some speaking, do some firearms instruction, do some private investigation work, some executive protection work, just whatever kind of tickles my toes at a given moment.
So not much of anything,
it's enough to keep me out of trouble, right?
Right. Gotcha.
So far.
Well, outstanding, man. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Certainly looking forward to this conversation. Folks, if only you could have been privy to the pre-live conversation.
As it turns out,
we've got to start recording that shit. I'm telling you.
No, we promised them we don't record it. That's the point.
Yeah, I know.
My person, we'd end up in a bag somewhere. We'd never be fucking seen again.
Well, I mean, you would. I'm fine.
We call it Sling'N Lead after hours, and have
yeah, that's exactly what we thought about doing. You're in our head. What are you doing, FBI man?
Yeah. Look, if you can't prove the bugs are in your house, they're not there.
Oh, they're here. I assure you.
That'll explain the brown recluse infestation.
Dude. Okay.
Okay, so see, you're connecting the dots now.
Total sidebar, but doing gun club workday things, moving cinder blocks. I saw a freaking spider the size of a Cocker Spaniel. That sumbitch succumbed to 147 grain HST, and I, honest to God, thought it was going to take more than one. That was a scary fucking monster.
Did you look around for maybe like a barrel with a funny symbol that had spilled over in a creek somewhere? Just might have looked like a circle with 3 oblong triangles around it.
Oh God!
No. Okay.
For those of your viewers that spent any time in Afghanistan, they'll be familiar with the camel spider. I don't know if you guys have heard about these things, but
yeah, I had one in my room.
Yeah, so you
you will shit kittens.
You will. Just like a brown recluse exoskeleton. So it's a shell on the outside like a scorpion.
Yeah, they're incredibly tough to kill
and fast. Oh yeah,
that's I think what freaked me out the most. So since we're on this tangent, let's continue. This is in Southeast Afghanistan. I had just brought a case of water into my room. sat my room down, popped open my laptop to watch a movie, and a camel spider ran out from the water the bag that the water bottles were in. I then grabbed one of the 1.5 liter bottles, because that was the only size you could really get, and proceeded to turn it into a club, full 1.5 liter water bottle. Smacked this thing clean, did not kill it. It got up with an attitude.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. So, and that was a little one. That thing was about the size of my Copenhagen can. Like, not very big at all. The largest one I have seen was from a distance up on a wall. It was the size of a dinner plate. I shit you not.
No.
Scared the hell out of me.
I killed one outside of JBAD, and it was on the wall of my tent. And I did the same thing. I had a hardcover book. I think it's sitting up on my shelf over here about Erwin Rommel.
It's the one with a camel spider shaped dent in it.
Tooth marks. I throw the book. I'm 6 feet away. I hit the camel spider solid. He falls to the floor and backs into the corner. And I'm like, well, I got to kill him now. He knows where I live. He knows what I look like. So I pull out, I've got a Strider BFK on my web gear. I pull that out and I kind of sneak up on him. I don't know why I think I'm sneaking up on this spider, but I pin him to the floor, right? It's plywood flooring. Well, now he's mad, right? I've literally skewered this thing to the floor and he's trying to come at me. And I'm like, ooh. So I look around, I pick up my boot and it was like, all's quiet on the Western Front. I'm like Ernest Borgnine with a shovel. I'm just beating the crap out of this thing in the hopes that it dies before I'm exhausted. Yeah, they're no joke, man. They are no freaking joke.
Just when you think it's dead, you wake up and there is like little spider graffiti on this, like, we're coming for you. It's
every horror movie you've ever seen, right? You shoot it twice and it gets up and comes and gets you.
No, the only acceptable method for taking care of a camel spider is something I can only say would be replicating and ripping off the movie The Thing.
Yeah, there you go. Kurt Russell, John Carpenter.
Kurt Russell and a flamethrower. Yeah. Yes.
I'm with you there.
Well, with that being said, Kent, what's new with you, man?
Well, teaching gun class.
Aside from the showdown with a spider at the OK Corral.
That fucking thing dead. That's all I'm saying. Red dot is life. Offset or no offset. Dead spider. Fuck that shit. I'm not playing around.
It's the only way to be sure.
Yeah. Man, I got to tell you, we are busy, which is cool. Still doing the college teaching thing, still doing the gun classes thing. Starting another real job soon. That's pretty cool. Life is good over here, man. I took my kid for a bike ride in the city today. And I only saw 3 crackheads. Actually, we went for a bike. Remember, we'll teach you. You'll remember. You remember City Island?
Yes.
Yeah, we went to City Island. We did a bunch of laps on the bikes. And then we decided to cross the bridge and go do Front Street in the city. City Island, good. Front Street, not good. Who'd have thought?
So have you mastered the appendix carry in bike shorts? That's all the audience wants to know.
No, but I had like 11 J-frames on me. Like, fuck all that. Sophie was literally like trying on different pairs of shorts. She's like, something's gonna take a holster. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Yes, it is. It'll be fine. Everything will be fine here. Honestly though, we're just lucky that she didn't pick up her new bike and beat somebody to death with it, if we're being real. But no, it was actually a nice day. So we got this little goofy little like wagon thing that you pull behind my bike and you put a toddler in it.
It's a rickshaw.
Yeah, it's like a daddy rickshaw. It's pretty much exactly what it is. So it takes me 3 times the effort to pedal the same distance because resistance.
Physics is a harsh mistress.
No, for sure. And of course, she was just like, oh, well, since we have that thing, we could put 5 waters in it and this bag and that bag. And it was a long one, but it was fun. So that was fun. Yeah, man. Just teaching gun classes. Got Jedi coming here in like a week, 2 weeks. Shooting Delaware State IDPA in 2 weeks. We'll see how I do at that match. Maybe well, maybe not so well. I shot an IDPA match this past weekend. and I managed to do a one-handed retention reload while still shooting a Glock 34 accidentally. I have no idea why I made that life choice, but the video footage doesn't lie. That's exactly what happened. I just don't know what happened, but it was a spectacle to behold. Yeah, that's what I got. What about you?
Oh, jiu-jitsu, and more jiu-jitsu. So we're at the 30-day countdown mark to our next competition. So we're going pretty hardcore on the mats for that. Fun fact, we have got Cyborg coming to do a seminar in August. So for those that are uninitiated, Cyborg Abreu, Abreau, I want to say, or EU, heavyweight, multi-time world champion, ADCC champion. The dude is a machine. At over 40 as well. He has certainly earned his title of Cyborg. So yeah, check him out on social media. He's very, very, very skilled fighter. So it's always nice, with me being a bigger guy, 200 plus, it's not easy to find coaches and professors readily accessible in all cases. I will say my gym's a little bit different. We've got several heavyweight guys that fall into the same category as I do. But finding people that move the way you do, right? Especially with the younger generation of jiu-jitsu instructors, black belts, that they're much more, they're typically lighter weight. The athleticism is at a level that guys like me don't move as easily. Like we can do it, but you got to have a little bit more oomph in your giddy up, right? So all the spinning and the back flips and this, that, and the other, it's doesn't quite mold well. Like I said, I've been fortunate. A lot of my coaches are also heavyweights, so I've got a pretty solid bench of very qualified professionals to help. I need all the help I can get. Bibbity bobbity boo my ass into a championship one day. Yeah, it's good to have like a world champion come in for a seminar, especially someone of Cyborg's level, and do it a seminar. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Is there a birth certificate somewhere in Romania with the name Cyborg on it, or what's?
I mean, I'm sure. Is there a birth certificate from Romania with that name? I'm sure someone does, but
what's my man's real name, or is it Cyborg? How about I just?
I mean, that's what everybody goes by, but I don't really know him as any other name.
Okay. All right.
I can look it up. No, it actually does have it. I do owe the explanation or the answer. Let me find him.
Let me Google that for you. I know.
Yeah, Roberto. Oh, it's Roberto.
Roberto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a nice picture of him with like a World War II bandage around his forehead, gushing blood as he's holding a championship belt. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, why not? But yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, good times.
Cyborgs.
So
don't say the word cyborg. Them things scare me.
Right. So I wanna start the line of questioning off tonight because I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to author a book, and it just so happens that we have a guest who, if I'm not mistaken, has authored a book. TC. Sure. So please tell us, what is your book about?
Well, my book is about improving the way we instruct law enforcement officers to administer deadly force. Book's called Reasonable, Justified, and Necessary, which, if you're going to write a book and you come up with a really cool title and the publisher doesn't like it, you're going with the publisher's title. So don't get wedded to your really cool title that will never see the light of day. I also wrote that book while I was still in the FBI, so it's under a nom de plume. But you can get it off my website, or you can get it off Amazon or wherever else, or off the publisher's website. But
that's an interesting topic. And so what was I don't want to date too much, because I don't want to go too far into that realm, and I want to tread carefully here. But given the at what point was the crazy shit going on in our country when you decided to write a book on that particular topic? Because it seems very apropos.
Yeah, it's interesting the way the timing works out, right? I wrote the book. It was done in 2010, and I, spent a couple of years trying to get a publisher to bite off on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I did a big circle. I sent it to a bunch of publishers. Started at one and kind of went in a big circle. I didn't shotgun it out. I just sent to one, waited, sent to the next, waited, sent to the next, waited. Not really the way it should be done. Not the smart way to do it. But it's the way I did it. And I eventually circled back to the first publisher and talked to Dave Spalding. And Dave said, well, let me make a call. And he uses that same publisher, and he just happens to have two of their best-selling books. So when he called and said, hey, I wrote the foreword on this book, you should really consider it. The next thing I got was a letter from that publisher saying, yeah, we'd love to publish your book. So I've got that in a file with the rejection letter that they had sent me 2 years earlier.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's it's a heavy read. It's not really it's not a book you're just going to kind of casually read and, oh, this was very entertaining. I wrote it way too heavy. If I rewrite it, I will, change canine to puppy, that sort of thing. But it really kind of advocates for taking the information that folks like Dave Spalding and others have, or Dave Spalding and Dave Grossman have come up with in terms of what we know happens in actual gunfights, and advocates to put it back into the training paradigm. Because we're still teaching cops to shoot on square ranges at known distance, in good lighting, in good weather, with very little pressure. And that's just not what a gunfight is. So, I've said for a lot of years that most police qualification courses are designed to insulate the parent agency from lawsuit, not to keep the individual officer alive or the people other than the recipient of lawful deadly force alive. Cops miss an awful lot of rounds they put in the air. Mm-hmm. And unlike the bad guys, we own them, right? We own ethically, we own them legally. So why not train better to put bullets where they need to go in actual gunfight conditions, or closer to gunfight conditions than we train at now? So that's a distilled version of my book.
Hashtag police brutality. Why don't they just shoot the knife out of the hand, bro?
Oh, God. Doesn't that drive you crazy when people ask that question? It drives me bonkers, because the first thing it does is it assumes that you can use a firearm as a non-deadly force implement. Right. Well, yeah, I can choose to shoot him in the chest or choose to shoot him. My favorite is the leg. 2 different wars I've served in, I've seen a lot of people dead from leg bullet wounds. I've watched people bleed out from leg bullet wounds. So the idea that, I can just shoot the knife, because, McGarrett used to shoot guys off the top of, high-rise buildings in Honolulu with a J-frame. So why can't you lousy cop, take the knife out of the guy's hand? Must be because you're intentionally trying to kill people because you're a murderous bastard. So that question just drives me bonkers. It's hard enough to hit another human being at all when they're actively trying to kill you, let alone a knife in their hand or their leg or whatever.
It's
this thing.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to throw my 2 cents out there for the whole shoot him in the leg thing. Because this is what bothers me. Like, it's not even like that's coming from other, we'll use the term gunfighter, right? This isn't even coming from other people that carry guns, either professionally or as a part of their daily civilian life. This is coming from people who won't even look at a real gun.
Yeah.
Dude, look, I'll armchair quarterback a football game, but I can at least throw a football. I have held a football in my hand, right?
Right.
I feel somewhat qualified to pick apart Peyton Manning's inability to run a wishbone pattern. Okay.
Yeah.
However, that's like, come on, man.
Yeah. And there are plenty of people out there like Kent and yourself that will say, look, if you don't know anything about guns and you hate guns, come out to a class. I'll give you an hour of my time. I'll give you 2 hours of my time.
Absolutely.
And you may still be stupid when we're done, but you won't be ignorant. right? You will at least have some basis for your opinion, whatever it is. And, we may still disagree, but for God's sakes, find out, get some real actual information instead of just spouting off. I mean, these same people would never in a million years think to tell their surgeon how to do his job, right? They probably wouldn't even think to tell their plumber how to do his job, but they'll tell a cop how to administer deadly force. And it baffles me. It never ceases to baffle me. So I hear those questions. I take a deep breath. I calm down. I count to 10. I try to help that person push back their frontiers of ignorance. But there's a lot of it out there. There's a lot of it out there.
I'm going to tell you what. I have about a 40-yard wide snowplow blade on the front of my truck, and I've been pushing back those frontiers as hard as I can. And that thing getting tired, I'll tell you that.
Still feel like a little Dutch boy, don't you?
Oh,
I'm so glad I'm not the only one that uses that analogy. Thank you, TC.
I'm here for you, brother. I am here for you. I've done my research before I got here on the show.
Every time look, if y'all don't know about the little Dutch boy and the leaky dike, like y'all need to read some children's stories and fables and shit.
Read a book. Yeah,
I'm tired. No, don't.
Hold on.
No, don't you dare shoot this down for me.
Hold on. I saw a leaky dike in Harrisburg today. She was on Front Street. Anyway.
Done.
I knew he was going to go there.
I mean, you said it.
Yeah. I said don't go there.
What is terrifying to me is when we have guests that have like somewhat similar life experience and y'all talk the same. That's fucking terrifying. You and TJ are the same person, just separated by about 15 or so years, maybe 20. I'm not sure. Right.
Well, I'm hopeful that someday I too can be considered the eye candy on the show. So,
right. Well, there's that.
We have tryouts every Thursday.
Excellent. I'll iron my thong.
So let's go to the book for a minute.
Okay.
And talk through some of these. For those playing the home game, Dr. Fuller here has dedicated a significant amount of his academic study to the subject matter of his book. Is that a fair enough? That's a fair way to say it, right?
Yeah, I worked on it for my master's degree and on my doctorate, so it was a significant research concentration for me for a long time.
Oh, and just because I learned this lesson the hard way a couple of weeks ago when a doctor showed up on the scene of an accident, I'm conditioning myself to defaultly ask this question: what kind of a doctor?
Excellent question. It's an educational doctorate in educational development and leadership studies. Wait a minute. It's right here above my head here.
Which one of my degrees do I need to read to get this right?
Sorry. Hey, it was in Vermont, man. I didn't have cable TV. I had nothing else better to do but go to UVM. Plus, I mean, you drive through that campus in the fall. Whew, I was like, I'm going to get pulled over and cited for lewd staring. I got to.
Here's how I know my wife watches this show, because you just said that shit, and from upstairs I heard, "Hey." That was fucking, bro. I love you. That was the best moment of this whole podcast ever. She being from Vermont, of course, is
there. You go. Yeah, it was educational leadership and policy studies is what the doctorate is in. It's an EDD.
Okay. Thank you. Continue, please.
Certainly.
So the gentleman on the show has done a thesis level study on the topic, as opposed to Googling some shit that he saw on the face space. So TC, I will tell you that as I was discussing this week's show with you, and as wants to happen around my household, my wife asked me like, "Oh, who do you have coming on? What's going on? Blah blah blah." And TC was good enough to send me his CV, so I was reading it. After having just read a Facebook post from somebody about why people like us have no idea what the fuck we're talking about, and it was hilarious to me to be like, looking at the iPad, looking at the phone, looking at the iPad, looking at the phone, going, I wish I could just take these two things and go like that and slam them together. And now we have a podcast where we can do just exactly that very thing. So just don't fucking assume you know everything when there's somebody that I guarantee you would say he doesn't know everything.
Yeah.
Like
well,
that.
And I will be the first to say that I don't have the capital T truths to a lot of stuff.
Right.
But I do have an opinion, and I try to make sure it's an informed opinion. One of the points I make in the book quite a bit is we have a lot of folks in law enforcement, especially, but in general in the gun community, that have anecdotal information. They have life experience. They have a lot of been there, seen it, done it. They have a lot of training. They have a lot of skills. And then we have a couple of folks that have academic backgrounds. And we don't have a lot of that mesh. And I think it's important that we get more of it, not because I'm not trying to be self-serving here, but because we do have to make our points, not just to one another in the gun store, right? I mean, we've all been in those conversations where you go in there and you talk about, you argue 9mm versus 45, or you talk about whatever other silly legal, strategy that's coming out of DC or your local folks or whatever. But we need to be able to fight back in a way that isn't just, well, I know this because it happened to me. That I think that has value. And I think it breathes life into the dry statistics that we can quote. But I think we also need to be able to quote those dry statistics. We need to be able to publish those papers, those peer-reviewed papers, and get them out there and write with intelligence in order to sway the middle, right? Because we're not going to sway the far left. We don't have to sway necessarily the far right. But it's that great swath of folk in the middle that just want to live their lives. They just want to, they just want to exist and go through life, and they don't really want to be victimized in any way, shape, or form. And they keep hearing the news tell them, well, oh God, AR-15s, they're coming to get you. They're all, everybody's getting killed with AR-15s. And we need to do a better job of getting our message out there in a way that takes advantage of the academic information that is out there. And we need to do more academic studies to shore up the anecdotal information that we already have. Is kind of my opinion. And I boiled it down in the book, talking about making the case for additional firearms training and better firearms training, deadly force blocks of instruction to law enforcement management. Because you always have these fights within law enforcement organizations of managers who see the forest and the instructors who see the trees, right? They just want to keep the cops alive. And the managers will tell you, yeah, we want to keep the cops alive too, but they're busy doing cost benefit analysis all the time, right? They've got to weigh the trade-offs. They've got to see that we've only got this much money, and we've got to divvy up the pot of money in a way that, is best for the department. And maybe that means we don't get to send people to go take this class because we've got to get the whole department trained on gender inclusion, and we've got to get the whole department trained on racial sensitivity and de-escalation techniques, or whatever else. And that might be a valid and important portion of the training blocks that your community demands. And we need to understand that the community gets a vote here. But at the same time, we need to make a better case for, look, we're trying to not just save their lives, we're trying to save our own lives. And we owe it to our own people to give them the best preparation possible should the flag fly.
Are you saying that $37,000 a year is not enough to sacrifice your own life because we say so?
It wasn't for me.
How dare you?
I wasn't making a whole lot more than that as an infantry lieutenant back in the day when I went off to the Gulf War. So really, what do I know?
Yeah.
But we do make some pretty significant demands of these young people that we put in harm's way. I would argue and have argued that we need to make sure that we prepare them as best we can for that eventuality, as tragic as it is.
What's the same thing we tell the civilian concealed carry students, right? This is a high consequence, low probability event that we're training for, yeah? Like, if you're a good cop, you may live your whole career and never have that thing occur. That terrible, deadly force, awful encounter, whatever. There's no Venn diagram between good cops and cops that get into a lot of fights. Those two things aren't necessarily mutually, or maybe are mutually exclusive. I mean, if you're the cop in Mayberry and nothing ever the hell happens.
Yeah, nothing happens until the day it does.
Exactly. Well, exactly, right? So if you're on for 20 years.
Right. If you're the outlier, those statistics are meaningless.
Right. Statistics are cold comfort to the man who was struck by lightning twice.
Yeah.
I don't know who said that shit first, but I know Scott Chadlinski said it to me, so I'll credit him with it.
Did he say it twice though?
No, he did not. That's true.
I get back to him.
Yeah.
So that's one of the points I make a lot in the book is, we need to give these officers the best training we can and the most relevant training we can. Certainly teaching them how to operate the firearm safely, how to take it out of the holster, point it at somebody, put it back in the holster. That's important, but that's not fighting with a gun, And then when you start talking about things like contact distance fighting with a gun, an entangled fight with a gun, where, okay, this guy has taken me to the floor and now he's on top of me. He's trying to do a ground and pound, like George Zimmerman suffered, right? He's getting his head's bounced off the concrete. How do we fight with a gun? Because the gun's present. In Mr. Zimmerman's case, it wasn't until the bad guy went for his gun that he ever drew his gun. But when that happens with a police officer, it could very well be too late. And it often is, right? We have cops that get beat to death with their gun in their holster. It happens. So we need to do a better job training that. Well, that's almost nowhere is that in the basic academy curriculum. Typically, you'll see it given to SWAT officers who, of course, are the last guys on the department that need it. Frankly, it's the patrol officer that's going to get in that fight at 2 a.m, or the trooper or the deputy. So we need to do a better job, in my mind, of giving the training, giving the right training, and giving to the right people.
What is the psychology of somebody who is still willing to do that job
these days?
Right.
I wish I could comment intelligently. I have plenty of friends that are doing the job. I was fortunate enough to go to the National Academy as a counselor. Shout out to the nice folks in 269. And a lot of those guys that graduated with me are still out there doing the job. They're police chiefs, they're sheriffs, they're frontline supervisors. And the best I can tell, the reason that they do it to this day, in the spite of what's going on, is it's a calling. For a lot of these guys, it's a calling. And I've heard plenty of arguments that people have made about, they're propping up a corrupt system, and that may well be, in your opinion. My opinion is these are dedicated people. These are people who have been doing the job for 10, 15 years. I don't know how they recruit anymore, frankly. I don't know how Baltimore Police Department recruits anybody. For example, I don't know how the Milwaukee Police Department is going to recruit anybody. The only two things I can see any of these big departments that have, really gone after their police. The only way I see them being able to recruit is paying a lot more money to include professional liability insurance. Now that we're taking away everybody's, why can't I think of the phrase?
Qualified immunity.
I'm sorry?
Qualified immunity.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Now that we're taking that away, we've got to give these guys something. Because, if you're telling me I don't have qualified immunity, I'm not doing the job. So you either got to pay them a whole lot more money or lower the standard. Right? We've got to just drop the standard down to ridiculous levels. And eventually you'll find somebody that'll do the job. My argument would be you're paying a guy $20,000 a year in Milwaukee because he can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. And he's the only guy that applied for 150 job openings. He might not be the guy you want policing your community. Well, I guess we'll see. Hopefully the pendulum swings back soon, but I don't know. I certainly wouldn't do the job. If my son, when he's old enough, or my daughter, when she's old enough, I will not recommend going to law enforcement. And it's a career that, understand, I'm retired from the FBI. My wife is currently employed by the FBI. My father-in-law is retired FBI. It's a family trade around here. And I really struggle with the idea of encouraging my kid to go do that. At least in this current environment.
Yeah, it's a tough decision. It really is. I'm glad
people are doing it. It's like pediatric oncology. I can't do it. I wouldn't do it, but I'm glad someone will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting that you brought up the future and the family tradecraft kind of thing, because for a guy to tell his son, I wouldn't do what daddy did. That's how far things have to have fallen. Imagine that. You certainly, deservedly so, you have a sense of pride for your accomplishments and your resume and your time served and the things that you've done to benefit the nation, in our community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You didn't do that stuff for no reason. And yet, when you're a child is of age, you're having to think twice about recommending it as a career choice. If that's not a really bad bellwether, I don't know what is. That's a terrifying thought.
And I don't think I'm alone there. I mean, I really.
Oh, no, I know.
So it's interesting because art often imitates life, right? So it just so happens that the art of today is predominantly manifested in the form of internet memes. But with that being said,
that was kind of tortured, but okay, I'm with you.
Okay, so with that being said, I've seen a meme going around recently that was strong men create easy times create weak men create hard times, right? We saw the same thing happen post-Vietnam, right? And leading into the first Gulf War. A lot of your combat veterans, your hardened combat veterans that had a lot of skills despite the various, scars, both physical and non-physical, that are left behind in the wake of that war, right? You had a lot of them exit the military. What was left was a bunch of, pansy ass, pencil pushing, political kiss asses that made up the officer corps to a large extent post Vietnam War, all right, or those that were left in the wake of the exodus of all those qualified individuals. And we ended up getting soft to a large extent. Of course, no disrespect to any of the service that you did during the first Gulf War, TC. But, there are, of course, exceptions to the rule. But, by and large, if you look at what the military fighting force has become over time, there was a period where, especially during the Gulf War, the Clinton era peacetime military, that really wasn't adequately prepared for asymmetric warfare that we saw in the Persian Gulf, right? Desert Storm, Desert Shield, those could have been done. Those were arguably peacekeeping missions to a large extent, right? There's a reason they call it the 100 Hours War. Then you fast forward to the early stages of the global war on terror, where we got to hard times and hard men and women were created in the wake of fighting terrorism. Right. And now, but the downside is we have been fighting that war for so long, we're getting caught in that cycle before that war is completely over. Right. The military, ask anybody that is in the military today. It is a shadow of its former self. When we were all crush, kill, destroy, go kick the enemy's ass. Now we're a group of nation builders. We're an armed Peace Corps. Essentially is what we've become in Afghanistan. Right. So, it's just kind of my take on it. It's kind of weird to see that manifest itself into reality and actually witness it firsthand.
Yeah, and it's sort of the story of our times, right? I mean, it's been our reality for over 20 years at this point,
right? But and to draw the parallel though to law enforcement, right? You look at the periods of time where there certainly the temporal distances were far more exaggerated because it wasn't as high of an operational tempo, I guess you could say. At least it wasn't under the perception of having a high operational tempo because the incidents were largely isolated. But we had instances in our own nation where police relaxed, crime got worse. You look at places like, to your point, TC, you said Milwaukee, Baltimore, practically all of Oregon, right? Where we have these instances where we went from having hard times and needing the hard men and women to address those hard times, that now we've got these easy times and those hard men and women are being shunned, right? Am I making sense here?
You are. I mean, what worries me about this nowadays is, you see a lot of parallels with the 60s and the 70s in terms of leftist kind of violence, although we haven't seen a weather underground yet, but who knows? I'm sure you probably make the argument that sections of Black Lives Matter or some of the other nationalist groups out there might be following those footsteps. But what worries me now, and what I find to be much more of an existential threat than just these terrorist groups, If that's how you choose to define them, perhaps you don't. I don't know. But it's the involvement of our politicians. In the 60s and 70s, you had politicians that were anti-war, but largely the idea that politics stopped at the coastline still applied.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have members of Congress actively inciting violence on the streets.
Yeah.
We have them actively inciting insurrection. And, we can argue the definition of that word. But when I see, a congresswoman from California fly to Minnesota to cause problems in a judicial proceeding, I get worried. When I see our federal government spending money on a scale that would embarrass a drunk sailor, I get worried. When the money is just being spent like there's no end to it, I worry about the command of basic economics. I worry that instead of calls for peace and harmony and calm down and let's everybody go home, I see the mayor of a major metropolitan city on the West Coast in the riot, getting pepper sprayed and getting tear gassed. These things concern me because they are such a radical departure from what we used to have. I mean, you remember, talking to your point, I've seen memes that say, do you remember when adults were in charge? And it had a picture of Maggie Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, right? And
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Yeah, and some of us do remember that. And now we just have kids. I mean, they're just spoiled children that are running the show. And some of them are 85-year-old women from California. But they act like spoiled children. Now, I don't think these people are stupid. So therefore they must be acting on some sort of a plan. And let's face it, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the Democratic Party was really on the ropes. I mean, it was dying fast because times were good. Well, look now, the current president arguably didn't run a campaign and he's in office. Other people campaigned for him.
He's not in office. He's in a Hollywood set. Trump's still in charge.
Is that the one where they filmed the moon landings?
Yeah, he freaking Z-New and Z-Morph told me so. QAnon sent me the whole thing, right?
But these things, to me, they're causes for concern. We see places where, in essence, warlords have taken over, and we're balkanizing the country. We're balkanizing the country into these little.
That's a really interesting parallel you're drawing there. I like that terminology, the warlordism that you see with that.
Well, I mean, when you have what happened here last week or the week before, where there was a murder in one of these little autonomous zones, and the people inside brought the corpse out, handed it to the cops, and wouldn't let the cops go in and investigate, and the police said, well, "Okay, what world are we living in?" I don't get that.
No, that is no shit the stuff you see in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It's no different than the tribalism you see in Afghanistan.
Yeah. And, we're also balkanizing our laws. We're always talking about, we're a nation of laws. We're a nation of laws. And some of us take pride in that concept, right? We're a nation of laws. Well, unless it's drugs, then, okay, well, over here you can use drugs and over there you can use drugs, but not over here you can't use drugs. Okay. Well, what about immigration? Well, over here is an immigration sanctuary state, and over here is an immigration sanctuary city, and over here is a section of the country that's not. Well, what about guns? Well, now, I mean, we're picking and choosing laws around this country that we're going to obey, and we're picking and choosing laws that we're not. So, what happens when I get in the car with my cousin Jose and an AR-15 and I drive from Maine to Arizona? How many laws am I going to break, just by making that drive? Well, it depends on the jurisdiction you're in. Well, how am I as a regular citizen supposed to keep track of all of that?
You mispronounced domestic terrorist and international arms trafficker.
Right. Depending on where I am in the state. I mean, I joke all the time that I can't move back to my home state because I own a couple of 10-round or 20-round magazines for an AR-15. So I'm fine here in the Carolinas. I put 2 of those in my pocket. I walk into California and I'm doing time up at Pelican Bay.
Yeah. Do we need to let's even emphasize, they don't even have to have bullets in them.
Or what was that goofy law they passed in New York a few years back where you could have a high capacity magazine, but you couldn't load it beyond 6 bullets? Really?
7.
My bad. And I lived in New York. You'd think I'd know that. Of course, I was a Fed, so I just sort of ignored their state law.
Peasants.
Be gone from us. We cast you out.
Oh my God.
But it's just, we're seeing these slow fragments and this fissures running through the country, and that worries me, especially when you have politicians that seem to be hell-bent on taking advantage of that to not bring us together, not to calm people down, but rather to incite people to, not their better angels, but their worse.
Right, because Instagram.
Well, I really want us to get to the topic of tonight, but at the same time, I'm not even expecting politicians and political leaders to even choose a side. I would even go one step further and say, let them choose a side. Let them say they're on the side of the rioters and the protesters, right? What is wrong with coming out and saying, I understand you are all upset. I am equally outraged as you all are, but let us all calm the fuck down and let cooler heads prevail. I will not allow the perversion of justice. I will oversee this, right? Like, I've got your back. Let's not burn down mom and pop's gas station / bodega.
Yeah.
Because yes, what happened was tragic. I am on your side, but let the system work. Yeah. Right? Like, would it have killed them to say that? No. At the very least, they have that plausible deniability to not be the headline of Representative so-and-so incites violence and 2 murdered in the shooting spree, right? It's crazy the way. I don't understand how these people are wired. I really don't.
No. And it's not functioning in the best interest of our nation. When you're a member of Congress, one of your tasks is to function in the best interest of our nation. Yes, you represent your constituency, but how does flying to Minnesota and trying to undermine a critically important court case serve your constituency in Southern California? I wonder. I worry. And again,
her constituency is from some other planet.
The argument. But it's you don't. I have been multiple times over the course of my bureau career put on the ground at gunpoint, right? Mistaken identity. Local officer sees me in a place he doesn't think I should be, doing something he doesn't think I should be doing, pulls a gun, tells me to get on the ground. You know how many times I got shot doing that? Never. You know how many times I got tased doing that? Never. You know how many times I got pepper sprayed doing that? Never. How many times have I been buckled up and handcuffed? A bunch. Of course, there were those who will then make the argument, well, that's your white privilege coming to the fore. I can't fight your racism. I'm sorry. But the reason that I never got beat up, shot up, is because I don't fight. You don't make the case on the street. Society can't allow you to simply fight the police and go home. We don't function that way in this country. The way we function is you're under arrest. Okay, let's hash this out in court. That's how you function. Every one of these folks that have been killed over the last several years that have become media darlings, that have become,
martyrs,
bearers, however you want to term it. Yeah. Had any of them simply complied, they'd be alive today. With the possible exception of, what was his name? Eric Brown up in New York, who died of, significant complications, and possibly George Floyd, given all the fentanyl he'd ingested in his pre-existing conditions. I don't know. I'm not an MD, as we've established. I'm an EDD. But you comply and you fight it out in court. You don't fight it on the side of the road. You just don't. It's not a good thing to do. It doesn't have good outcomes for you.
TC, have you ever seen the animated comedy Archer?
Oh, I live by Archer.
Okay.
Love me some Archer. My wife and I roar over Archer.
Well, there's a scene where they end up at Area 51 on the ground. Mm-hmm. And Archer's using like a Q clearance or whatever. Like hot -3, tender -juicy, that whole thing.
How'd you get his
Q clearance or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm imagining about like you being in we're just gonna say Arkansas, on the ground, on your knees, being cuffed and stuffed, and you're like, wait, Officer Cletus, and he's like, what? And you go, hot -3, tender -juicy, 70s like some bitches are fed. We're gonna have to cut this one loose. Is that about how it goes?
Yeah, I would love to say yes, and if it makes you feel better, I will say yes. But the reality is, it usually goes, look, my ID's in my back pocket. Can you just take it out and take a look at it? Yeah, my badge is on. This is where my badge is. Of course, the bureau has big creds, small badge, so we always showed them our credentials instead, which is always funny because it's not like police officers get training on what does a set of federal credentials look like.
I was just wondering, you could have some shit laminated from a pizza shop. Like,
yeah. Matter of fact, it's a funny story about that. In Afghanistan, we were working a lot with, I was over there with the bureau, and we worked a lot with the CIA, and all of them were using, I guess what could best be most complimentary described as a nom de guerre, but they were all using fake names. And so myself and my boss were sitting around one day, and I'm like, you know what? I don't have a FBI specific ID. And every little compound within the compounds over there, and you may have had this experience, TJ, had its own ID. So if you wanted to go to the Saudi Arabian Special Forces compound, you had to have one of their ID cards. And if you wanted to go right across the street to visit one of the A teams from U.S. Special Forces, you had to have one of theirs. And if you wanted to go to Ranger Battalion headquarters, you had to have one of theirs. So you had this packet of IDs that you were constantly flipping through, and they're mostly generated in country, right? So it's literally, like you said, it's a pizza box with their picture on it. So my boss and I are sitting there and we're like, you know what we need? We need fake IDs that say FBI. It's like, yeah, that's what we need. So over the course of the next hour, we proceed to gin some up. We get a little computer picture of Afghanistan with the Afghan flag on it, and it says FBI. And then we go and we hang up a U.S. flag over a door, and we stand there and we get a little letter board. And he's like, okay, what's your name going to be? Like, oh, I got this. Dirk Diggler. And I take a picture. So now my ID says Dirk Diggler, and I've still got that ID around here somewhere.
I was saying, it if you don't still have it, didn't count.
Shame on me. The best part was when an MP pulled me over and asked me for my ID, and I was like, because I wasn't wearing a seatbelt on post, so he's going to give me a seatbelt ticket.
Must have been on Bagram.
Yeah, it was Bagram. That's exactly where it was. And I was laughing because we were still getting rocketed all the time. I'm like, I'm not wearing a seatbelt. The rocket comes in, I'm bailing. So, but having been in the military, I knew, okay, well, a military ticket, it's not like I'm getting points on my license. It's going to my command structure and they will dispense justice. Okay. So I said, Sergeant, I have a lot of IDs. Which one do you want? And he's like, cause I've got a full beard. I'm in like Mooj costume. I've got my little Mooj hat on. I've got an AK in the car. And he's like, cause he could tell I was, some sort of OGA. I said, well, would you like the one from my unit? He goes, yeah, that'd be great. So I hand him the Dirk Diggler ID. And he looks at it, tucks it in his clipboard, and commences to write me a ticket. And I'm like, God, this guy's playing it straight. This is really good. God. This is really good. So he signs it, he hands it to me, and I'm looking at him. I'm looking for him to crack a smile and go like, I get it. But he doesn't. He's never seen the movie. So I'm like, in for a penny, in for a pound. Dirk Diggler. Here you go, Sergeant. Hey, thanks, sir. Really appreciate you not giving me a hard time about this. Hands me my copy. Have a good day. You too. So I drive off chuckling. Right? I go back. I told my boss, hey, look, this happened. Okay. Well, like a week later, the head guy for the FBI in the whole country comes back.
The blotter report came out.
Ding, 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 ding. He's in a meeting with the 25th ID's CG, the commanding general, both of his deputy commanding generals, the division sergeant major, the Air Force 1 star. I mean, these are all the movers and shakers, right? Chief of station for the CIA. They're all having this meeting. You get to the end of it, and of course, the commanding general says, okay, Sergeant Major, do you have anything? And he says, yes, sir, I got one thing. Look, gentlemen, if one of your guys gets pulled over by one of my MPs, don't give him a fake name. All right, tell your guys not to give him a fake name. And everybody's looking around the desk, and he goes, like Dirk Diggler, and the whole table busts up, except the FBI guy. He's like, what the hell's so funny? And then he looks at him and goes, FBI, and the table loses it again, right? Everybody just loses their shit. And he's like, what the hell? What are you talking about? I don't know. So he comes back to the office, and he's like having a briefing with us. He's like, what is this Dirk Diggler? And all of us just start cracking up, right? And I was like, oh God. Okay, sir.
I can see that come. I can just see that manifest you right now. Hey, Steve, you got a minute? Yeah, Chief, what's up? Hey, we got We got an issue with a fake ID getting passed around. Who
Yeah.
who the fuck is using Dirk Diggler as their handle? TC. It's like it's just.
Well, yeah, and then the word goes out, and a buddy of mine over at NCIS that we were working with a lot, he comes over. He has one of the Mooj tailors make me up a name tape of Diggler, slap it on my blowout kit on my tack vest, and I spent the rest of the tour going around with Diggler on my chest.
That's a thing of beauty, man. That's awesome. Thank you
Fake
for
ID.
sharing that.
Fake ID.
Oh man.
So you said you wanted to talk about the topic of the cast. What is the
Yeah,
lead
so-
story?
Yeah, so the lead story is Gray Man.
Oh, okay.
The lead story is Gray Man. So I literally put what Kent told me to put. So Kent, I'm gonna let you lead this line of questioning.
Yeah. So I have one question before we get into Gray Man, which is you military dudes and your acronyms.
Sorry.
Were
Yeah,
you taking
or-
notes? Were there any you had specific questions on?
Yeah, I do. What the hell's an OGA?
Oh, other government agency.
Right.
Thank you.
It's a slang term for usually CIA, but also us. DEA, they had a presence over there. They were really responsible for targeting a lot of the poppy fields. So, anybody that was non-military, non-DOD type was just lumped into the OGA category.
Mhm.
Got it. Yeah, because y'all just I could not even be here. You and TJ could just be like, yeah, so my XYZ 123 showed up and the 21 Bravo told the Alpha Charlie guy that the Delta was a dick, and
Well, those 21 Bravos are known liars, so you got to watch out for that sort of thing.
yeah, you two dudes would just be laughing, and I'm over here like, I feel left out. I don't get it. So, TC, you've recently been promoting a YouTube channel and some other content, specifically regarding the Gray Man principle. So let's first define what is a Gray Man.
Sure. The YouTube channel I've been populating has been The Old Gray Man, spelled Gray. Apologies to our English viewers. But it's a concept that seems to be pretty popular in a lot of areas about, flying under the radar, right? Keeping a low profile, going through life, not drawing attention. But I noticed that a lot of, I did some research on it on YouTube, because that's what one does, right? And right before or after you check Wikipedia, I'm not sure which, I haven't got that down yet. But I noticed that a lot of the people that were chiming in on the topic had some theoretical basis, but the guidance they were putting out was really kind of all over the map. Some of it was good, some of it was not so good, some of it was clearly wrong, some of it was just there to sort of suck you in and then sell you a timeshare. So I thought, well, I don't need a timeshare, but maybe I can add to this conversation. So I started creating some content hither and yon, here and there, and put it up. I certainly don't do it every week, but I did manage to put some up today. It went live right when this podcast started. So there's another bit up there, and they only go 10, 15 minutes at a whack, but it's just sort of talking about going gray, moving through the world in a low profile manner designed not to get you noticed, from the perspective of a guy who's done what I've done and been where I've been, and done an awful lot of surveillance. And sort of chiming in on some of the things you might want to consider if that's the route you want to go. We all know guys that walk around that look like, a 511 catalog exploded on them. And that's kind of the way they walk around through the day. And that's, I guess if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But if I'm a bad actor and I recognize what I'm looking at, the first thing I think of is, okay, when the festivities start, that's the first guy. If you maintain a gray status, to my way of thinking, it gives you more options. It allows you more options. Same with carrying a concealed firearm, frankly. It doesn't solve all your problems. Going gray doesn't solve all your problems, but both give you additional options that you would not have if you did not take advantage of their presence. If I'm not being noticed by the bad guy and something bad pops off, I can turn on my heel and leave, right? or I can still choose to get involved, but possibly from a position of surprise. And surprise is a great weapon. It's a great equalizer. So I advocate for the use of surprise.
So the other content that is available on this topic is often suspect, such as Army Ranger discusses gray man principles. I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
And Army Rangers, okay, so I click, I watch the video, and my man looks like he was trying to play Marcus Luttrell in the movie. Right? And he's on a YouTube video, and he's, all right, guys, let's talk about being a gray man. Like, dude, you have tip of the spear tattooed on your forehead.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure how you're going to be a gray man. You don't seem so gray to me. You seem like green man. You look like military to me. From fucking here to Hanoi, I go, that dude is in the military. Like, it ain't hard to figure out.
So it's funny. So last time I went to the range, there was a gentleman there who was working with a buddy of his that was, as most of us professionals do, those of us that have maybe a higher element of training than some of our other colleagues and cohorts, was coaching his buddy at the range, right? They were using a range that I wanted to use to sight in one of my AR optics. And I was like, hey guys, let me know when you're taking a break. I just need to sight this rifle in and we'll I'll work in with you if you don't mind. And they were cool with it. I'm like, hey, by the way, what group are you in? And he's like, is it that obvious? Okay. So from head to toe, or from toe to head, wearing Solomon's, Cry Precision pants, gunfighter belt, and some like 9/11 or 5/11 gear T-shirt or 9/11 memorial or it was some kind of, it was certainly a global war on terror themed shirt. He's like, wow, is it that obvious? I'm like, yeah. Yeah. See, I've seen a few of you guys up close. It's okay.
And, and the challenge, of course, because they also tend to be below 40. They tend to be in good physical condition. The challenge, of course, is especially strong for guys like that. They can go gray, but they have no training in it. I mean, it would be just like me saying, okay, here's how to be a successful military sniper. I have no actual experience being a military sniper. I've never owned a ghillie suit, but I've watched a lot of movies and I've known some snipers. In my particular training environment, let's talk about that for a second. There are a lot of people down here. I'm not terribly far from Fort Bragg. A lot of people down here that are wicked skilled and experienced with kicking down doors, throwing in a frag grenade, and machine gunning everybody that's still twitching in that room and then going on to the next room, right? They've done it a million times. They've fought in Fallujah. They fought all over the place, and they can do what we called in the military MOUT combat, which is military operations in urban terrain.
Wow, bringing it way back
in the day. But they have a lot of experience doing that, and they teach classes on that, and I think that's completely appropriate. Where it's a little weird is when they say, well, let me tell you about how to carry a concealed firearm as a civilian domestically. And that's kind of the niche I fit into, right? That's probably the niche, a similar niche that you fit into, Kent, because that's your experience base, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you're not going to tell people, look, this is what it was like, in Kuwait when I was there. This is what it was like in, JBAD or ABAD or one of these other places. But I can tell you what it's like to have to use a public toilet while you're carrying a Glock 34 and 2 magazines. I can tell you how to deal with that problem.
Preach, brother, preach.
But it's a real problem, right? It's one that almost never is talked about. And I can't tell you how many times I was called when I was a principal firearms instructor up in the Albany division. Hey, we've got a gun in the bathroom. Okay. Because people will go in, they take the gun off, they put it down, they forget to put it back on, they walk away. That's bad. That's a bad thing. And
don't do that, folks.
Don't do that.
For those of you listening, it's not okay.
But people do it all the time. Or, you go to sit down in the toilet. What do you do with that firearm?
Or the guy that hangs it from the coat hanger on the back of the stall by the trigger guard.
Seen it.
And then lifts up, and now there's a hole in the floor of sheets.
Or they, just undoing the pants, and the pants hit the floor because, you've got your your
two
gun
pounds,
on
2 pounds of hardware strapped to your belt.
right. Plus your EDC knife and your pepper spray and your collapsible baton and everything else you're carrying. That actually takes some training and some experience to deal with. That is really outside of military knowledge. And I'm not taking anything away from those guys. I was those guys, but it's not in their training set and it's not in their skill set. We used to get guys all the time that the Bureau would hire that were real deal trigger pullers, guys out of group, guys out of SEALs, occasionally Delta guys. And they would come out and more often than not, they would think, well, I know how to shoot because I've done it. I went through all my military training and I've been, in 12 different deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, that's great. It was all M4. Let's see how you do with a 40 cal Glock 22. And it was a whole different animal because it's a different set of skills, right?
No.
It's smaller. The sight radius is smaller. You don't have a red dot. You don't have as many points of contact.
Well, and not to mention, just generally speaking, we're all very quick to shun and poo-poo on law enforcement qualification training with a firearm, and their primary firearm is a sidearm. The military, when it comes to sidearms training, is deplorable.
Right. Well, because the military, we didn't win World War II because of the 1911, right? It's not going to be a strategic weapon. It's going to be important to you to save your hide, but it's really not going to be all that important to the general in charge of your division. So the military, if and I used to say it all the time when I was in, as an infantry platoon leader, if it got to the point where my Bradleys and my dismounted troops couldn't stop you and I had to shoot at you with a pistol, a whole lot of people done screwed up, right? A lot of us didn't do our jobs. And if it gets to the point where I'm shooting at you with a handgun, the smart thing to do is just train around myself because they just don't teach it. I think they're getting better. I really do think they're getting better in some areas, but you're right. By and large, handgun training is just, unless you're in a specialized unit, it's just not given any kind of emphasis.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The gray man concept is, it's even those that don't have, that military background, like the gray man concept shouldn't be confused with trying to mask military, like bravado, right? It's not meant to mask the military guy that looks like he eats glass and shits nails, right? It's about not drawing attention to yourself as what we call on the show a responsible self-defender. That guy that you see sitting on a park bench or in the food court at your local mall, and he's carrying small of the back and his Glock is clearly printing through the back of his shirt, is not doing the gray man thing.
He's
right. All the tactical Timmy shit aside, it's about not drawing attention to yourself as a responsible self-defender.
Right. And that encompasses a lot of areas, right? It encompasses your appearance. It encompasses your mindset. It encompasses your behavior. One of the guys that's out there that I think does a really good job, at least on his channel, of going gray is the guy over at Grand Thumb. I don't know if you ever check him out. It looks like just a normal schmo, right? Walking out when you see him just wearing his plaid, his flannel, just looks like a regular guy. Probably killed more people than polio, but you never know to look at it, right? That guy has got to go gray down. But SF guys, that's kind of their bailiwick on the battlefield. But you get a lot of guys that isn't their thing, and within their niche, they're very, very good, very good. But it comes down to it. I've arrested SEALs. I've arrested special forces guys because you get them outside that comfort zone. You get them in your own comfort zone, and it's a whole different animal. I wouldn't want them coming into my house to kill me because I think I'd lose. But if I got to go arrest them, I can do that. Because it's a different set of skills. It's a different set of training. It's a different set of experience.
Right.
Now, what does one arrest a SEAL for? Hair gel appropriation?
Illegal use of a mustache and sunglasses. No, I love SEALs. They're awesome dudes, and they're very, very good at what they do.
Balancing balls on their nose.
But, they're like anybody else. You go in, you serve from 18 to 22, 25, you get out, and now you're 35. Your body's all beat up. Now you got an opioid addiction. Maybe you get into other stuff that you should not get into. The next thing you know, there's a guy like me knocking on your door.
Yeah, that's one of the big misnomers, I think, and it comes along with it's the curse of the celebrity that has been applied to those individuals, right? And don't get me wrong, I've served with them, great guys all around. I'd trust any one of them with my life, but they're not infallible. They at the end of the day, they are still men and women, and they are subject to the same laws of reality and adulthood that we all are.
Yeah.
You know,
you got to avoid drinking your own bathwater. You got to avoid reading your own press clippings.
Yep.
That's true in the military. And it's certainly true when you get out. You know, I know a lot of guys in my profession that struggle when they get out, right? We have a lot of law enforcement that end up, dead within the first 5 years of retirement because a lot of them have so much of their self-worth and their self-identity tied up in what they did.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's true in the military too, right? We're still losing 22 a day,
Yep.
veterans to suicide because they're so tied up in what they did that they can't now address what they do. And that's a point I make in the gray man stuff is how I would respond to shots in a mall. If I'm in, for some bizarre reason, I'm actually in a mall, which I can't imagine what that reason would be, but okay, let's suppose I'm in one. And I hear shots fired. Well, when I was in the FBI, there was one set of responses that I would have. Now I'm not in the FBI. So my responses are entirely different. Entirely different. Now my job is get off the X and get out of Dodge. Be a good witness if I need to be. But, I'm not sticking around for the fight. For a lot of reasons, especially as litigious as things have gotten now.
Right.
If I shoot somebody that just isn't lily white, God only knows what's going to happen to me. You two I'd be comfortable shooting. Anybody else, maybe not. I say that with the utmost respect and love. I really do.
It's that damn white privilege, I guess.
It is. It is. A privilege to catch some bullets.
Ginger lives matter, sir.
Hey,
lives matter.
Hey, 3% of the global population, bro.
That's right. Well, what do you want me to say? Bearded lives matter. That's what you got to go with. BLM. Bearded lives matter.
Well, even to be fair, there's even a lot of women that can grow beards. So
to be fair, allegedly,
I am a Letterkenny fan as well.
You got to be. I got to blame Dan Brady for that one. He turned me onto that a long time ago, and
it's addicting. It's like watching a traffic accident.
It's very true, especially if you've if you've ever lived up north near the Canadian border or in Canada.
Kent, what's that like?
Well, it's cold.
It's chilly.
It's a little nippy. Every time you get called out of your house at 2 a.m. to do unforeseeable nonsense, you have to plow the fucking lane first before you get. Yeah.
I was up there one year. We got snow on the 4th of July. I was so pissed. Oh my God, I was mad. I was madder than hell. I was out washing my car in shorts and a t-shirt the day before. And the next day I'm shoveling my driveway.
Did the people up there say, "Is it cold enough for you?"
Only if they want to get punched in the snout.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm trying to wrap my head around how like those extreme northern states have not had all that many like mass shootings.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be justifiable if I had to hear that every day and it's -20.
Well, you know why, don't you? Because all the smart people left. Therefore, there's no way there could be a mass shooting because there's only 11 of us still there.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
What blows my mind is you drive through these little towns up there and you see little signs that say founded in 1780s. I'm like, who the hell came up here and said, you know what, Martha? No further. We're building a house here. Like, no central heat.
I believe those were the Vikings that came and found like, it's warm here.
No, the people that got the compasses with the W where the N should be.
Something.
They thought they were headed to California. Their stupid asses were headed to Pittsburgh, Vermont. How y'all doing?
I used to tell people in Boston, I like to go to Boston and warm up. Like to drive down there and get warm.
Yeah, absolutely true. So interestingly enough, the gray man, I'll use my experience today to talk about the gray man thing. Because other than myself and my spouse, I saw 3 people with guns in my travels today while riding a bike. 2 of them were city folk. It was 85 degrees today, and they were wearing every long coat, long shorts, or long, right? Like,
do you mean pants?
No, like and one shorts that are this far from the top of the ankle.
Oh yeah. I got
And
you.
they're wearing the freaking
Clam diggers.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
And clam diggers, exactly. And then they're on top of that, they're wearing a jacket, a full length jacket, right? And every time they were moving, they were adjusting the large hunk of metal that was in the jacket pocket. I saw that shit from 100+ yards away. As a matter of fact, as we were riding, my wife looked up and she goes, "Hey, let's turn left." And I looked up and saw my man, and I was like, "Yep, let's turn left." And we turned. She's like, she was ahead of me on it. Yeah, honey, you're right. Absolutely.
And that's a point I make in my gray man stuff is there are people out there that are going to notice these things.
Yep.
If you don't dress appropriately, and I'm guarantee you this guy had very little, if any, training, but they're going to notice them. And people like you are not the people we're worried about noticing. Like if you see me walking down the street and you say, "Oh, he's got a gun on his hip," I'm not worried about you because you're the kind of guy that's okay. You know where I am. You're going to keep me, kind of on your radar. You might move away from me, but you're not going to attack me. Most of your bad guys and most people in general aren't that observant. They're just not going to notice these things. But there is a subset of bad guy out there that will notice that. And there's a subset of those bad guys who will act on that information.
Yep.
And my point to the gray man is if you carry openly, which I'm all for the right, I think it's great that you have the right. I would support your right to do it. I find it tactically stupid and I would never do it. I'm glad people do because I find them to be tactical minesweepers, right? They'll be out there detecting for any bad guys for me, and I can make my own decisions. But by going gray, you have those options, right? You don't know I have a gun, per se, so you're not necessarily going to target me first. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. And maybe when things pop off, I can choose how I'm going to respond. I get to choose. I don't have to react to how you decided to react to my firearm. And so that's why I really kind of push that gray man idea because I think it gives you more tactical options.
Well, I mean, if you really want to talk, like if we want to draw the similarities to law enforcement, right? Take a bar scene, quintessential stereotypical bar scene. Within that bar, you've got 3 undercover police officers. Work at a crimes unit, gang unit, gang task force, whatever have you. Walking down the sidewalk directly in front of this establishment, you've got 2 plainclothes or 2 uniformed beat cops, and a bar fight breaks out. Not involving the undercovers we talked about, right? Who is obligated to an extent to respond, right?
Okay, well, it's a valid question.
The UCs could theoretically like, hey man, not my fight. I'm blended in.
Right.
I've got my thing. I'm going to bounce. And then you've got the uniform cops that are almost obligated to respond.
It's a scenario that it obviously doesn't just involve undercover guys. It involves deputy U.S. marshals, DEA agents, FBI agents, all kinds of folks that are plainclothes. That's our uniform, right?
Right.
Now, you shouldn't necessarily be drinking when you're carrying a gun. I mean, most organizations have policies against that. I know the Bureau did, unless you had special dispensation because of the type of case you were working. But by and large, if you're in a bar and you're armed, you're not drinking. Usually the response was, if you're undercover, you're not going to break cover,
right?
Unless there's deadly force, unless people start, shooting the joint up, then you're going to break cover. But anything short of that, you're not going to break cover. For us in the Bureau, my approach was, if it's a non-deadly force event, I'm not going to get involved. I'll be a good witness. And that's not just because I don't want to do paperwork, but it's because uniformed law enforcement officers at the local and state level have a different set of training. They have a different set of laws. They have a different set of qualified immunity. So they can function in that space better. They also have a whole lot more tools, right? And they have a radio, which I don't necessarily have. They have a whole bunch of guys that will show up there because they're part of the biggest street gang in town. They have canines, right? I mean, they can call and everybody shows. In a lot of departments, they just push a button on their radio and it sends out their location and a distress call. they're better at dealing with bar fights than a couple of FBI agents would necessarily be, and possibly undercover detectives, because those undercover detectives probably haven't been in the bag, haven't been in their uniform in a long time, right? They've been detectives for a long time, and it's not really their specialization either. All of that changes when somebody pulls a gun. Gun comes out, that's a whole other animal, right? But if it's just your standard issue run-of-the-mill bar fight, different story. We ran into it a lot on aircraft because FBI agents fly armed. So when I got out of the bureau, it was the first time I'd been through a magnetometer at an airport in 20 years. Just didn't go through them. But we had our guns on the plane. But of course, after 9/11, especially, you'd run into U.S. Air marshals on the aircraft. And they had their sort of charge and their laws and their policies, and we had ours. And they would often say, look, if there's a fist fight, you deal with it. If there's a surly passenger and the crew asks for help, you deal with it. We're only breaking cover if somebody attacks the cockpit. Okay. I mean, provided that my policies and everything will allow me to get involved, then yeah, sure, that's fine. Where I ran into trouble was sometimes there'd be like, okay, there's 3 of us on the plane. Great. Where are the other 2? They're not going to break cover. You can't tell you where they are. You got 2 other armed guys in this flying metal tube of death, and I don't know what they look like. Okay. But understand, I see some guy jump up with a gun, he's pointing it. Yeah, he rolls your dice, you takes your chances, right?
You might want to might want to put a priority on that Air Marshal's declaration.
Right. We probably should all understand we're all on the same team. But if you don't want to be on the team, then okay, good luck to you.
Hold on. Wait. Now I know you're full of shit, because the minute the guy has 357 SIG and some aviators, we know that's the guy, right?
Yeah, well, you'd like to think so, but until he fires it, you don't know it's a 357 SIG, right? He pulls it out, it's just a SIG.
No.
When that 3-foot column of flame blowing out the
front, how this works. If they're carrying, it's just like CrossFit. If they're carrying 357 SIG, you know, because they walk in with the creatine on their shoulder and they go, easy, Chief. I got 357 SIG.
Everybody chill.
We good here.
I got this.
I'm in the fucking zone.
It's kind of like, how do you know someone's been vaccinated? They'll tell you.
Yeah. My wife is an attorney. I tell her all the time, you know how to tell someone's an attorney, right? They tell you. She goes, shut up. Couch.
So a vaccinated vegan CrossFitter walks into a room. What does he talk about first?
Whew, that's a tough one.
Oh, shit.
Now, I say all that about the Air Marshals, but I will be the first to tell you their firearms qualification course is insane. It's a really, really good course. And I'm glad.
Cultural Friday's coming up, Apache Solutions.
Yeah, are you coming down here pretty soon, Kent?
Yeah. Paging Apache Solutions. Zach has another Cold Drill Friday to perform on camera.
Zach, go fuck up some more standards. Just go out there and it's fine. Just yank the trigger. It'll be fine.
But aren't you coming down here for a class here soon, Kent?
I am not actually going to be able to make it down for this one. I have an IDPA state match to shoot, unfortunately.
Good luck.
Well, I never do them, and I've been asked to do them, and I don't do them, and I've been asked. So now I'm going to do it. But I bought a seat in the class, so I'm donating it to somebody.
Oh,
I don't. No. It's not up to me. It's up to Timmy. I have no idea who he's giving it to.
Well, what good are you then? I was all set to open the top button, but the hell with you now.
Yeah, I'll buy you a class. That's all it takes.
If you want to score well at the tryouts on Thursday.
Shit. I mean, TC, I'm going to be teaching at Apache on August 15th, so maybe you should come to that one.
I can do it. I know what it is. I drove up there once, right?
I know. We met there in person.
Yeah.
It's the only thing in Yadkinville.
Yeah, well, I think there's a food truck up there.
It's parked at Apache Solutions.
Funny story about IDPA. I joined IDPA in Vermont in 1998. And as far as I know, I was the only IDPA member in the state for like at least a year and a half. I mean, I used to have to drive down to Springfield, Massachusetts to shoot because that was the only IDPA club I could find. And then I eventually found Pioneer Sportsman over in Concord, and I drove over there 75 miles each way just to shoot.
God almighty.
Yeah. Dedication, right?
There's like 11 of them now up there.
Well, good. I'm glad. I'm really glad. Because
Yeah.
for a long time, it was just me and my little group of cronies, and we would, gather up at the Richmond Park and Ride and then bomb down.
Richmond.
Yeah. Don't pretend you don't know where it is. I know you know where it is.
I know exactly where my mother-in-law owned a shoe store about 3 miles south of the Richmond Park and Ride.
Oh, there you go.
I know exactly where that place is. Hashtag John Shoe Shop North.
There you go.
It's no longer there.
Oh, no.
Although I do still get socks from the basement of that place every Christmas and have for years.
Makes you wonder.
That doesn't make me wonder at all. I'm just pissed she didn't give me all the smart wool at once.
Oh, you gotta love smart wool.
Oh,
God love smart wool.
yeah. Tim and AJ, Young Pei Chang. Oh, you train with Tim and AJ. I don't know about this AJ guy. There's only allowed to be one pudgy dude who's good with a handgun. That's me. I've got my little niche carved out. This AJ's, no, that's cool shit.
You got to be good. If you can't run, you got to be good. You go get help. I'll stay here and fight.
Yeah, no shit.
Right, I get that. I understand that.
That's about all I got left. I'm getting less pudgy though. This keto shit. TJ's been telling me keto works for the last year. He's right. Keto works.
It does.
To quote my mother, I'm not always right, but I'm never wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
I just hope you're able to keep it off 5-10 years. That's the real trick, right?
Young says I'm not pudgy. Homie, I am pudgy like a wudgy. You have no
husky. That's the word you want. Husky.
Yeah, sure. So let's go back to my gray man stuff because I wasn't finished with my gray man day. No, it's cool. So that was dude number one, right? Obvious gangbanger in jacket and clam diggers.
Okay.
Guy number two was one of us, right? I would bet you that nobody among nobody would make this dude for having a gun. But I made him. I looked at this guy and I was like, yeah, that's our dude, right? Like he's our guy. He's wearing the plaid. He's got the khakis on. He noticed me noticing him, which is a pretty good indicator that, people have their heads screwed on straight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the third dude thinks he's one of us, but wasn't.
Gotta have goals. You gotta have goals.
Was it the tack vest that gave it away?
No, it was the NRA t-shirt and the fucking, goddamn mom jeans with the hammer hanger on the side of them that never, ever had a hammer in it ever. This dude he has a hammer hanger. He doesn't know why he has a hammer hanger. He's got cargo pockets in his mom jeans. He's wearing Merrill hiking boots to walk on pavement. And he's wearing a straw hat and a real thick leather belt with the crossbreed emblems sticking out the right side of it.
Well, there you go.
3 different dudes. That no shit happened to me today. That's exactly how, dude for dude, that was it. And I was like, gangbanger? That's my man right there. That dude, I'm going to go look to him for some ammo here in a minute.
You'll give him a card.
Right. And then just
Fuddy McFutterson.
Yeah, just
give him 2 cards.
Just the worst. Oh God, he needs them. I mean, the worst. And we're riding, and the whole time Soph's kind of, because I have little dude behind me in the James wagon, so she's kind of riding blocker behind me, and every time she rode up next to me to talk to me about these people, she's like, "Hey, yeah." Now this is now she's more initiated than the average wife by a wide margin, but this this isn't Super Spy McGee like the guy who's on our show tonight. This is my wife after all.
It's great having a life partner, a spouse that's dialed in, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's insane. My wife, she almost shot Top Gun in her class at the academy, loves to shoot. We were dating, and she says, we'd been dating for a couple months, and she goes, what the biggest problem is with our relationship? And I'm like, I should really pay attention to whatever it is she's about to say. This sounds like it might be important. She goes, we don't shoot enough. I was like, oh, I'm screwed. I'm so screwed. And now the argument is who fights the fight and who evacs the kids, right? That's if something goes sideways, something goes high and right, which one of us is grabbing the kids, which one? She gets mad. She's like, well, I want the shotgun on my side of the bed. I'm like, okay, you can have the shotgun on your side of the bed because you have qualified immunity. So if anybody needs shooting, you shoot them. I'll be over here hiding behind your skirts. So, right? I think you just went mute on us, everybody.
There's worse problems to have.
Right? Am I not? I mean, and it's just nice knowing that if it does go sideways, we both trained on the same playbook, right? She got the same training I did.
Yep.
She practices the same way I practice. She carries the same stuff I used to carry. It's nice knowing if she's for some reason out of my sight, I know how she's going to think. She knows how I'm going to think. It's really, it's nice having that partnership. So I'm glad you have one as well, Kent.
It works out pretty good. And if only somebody would start up a consulting organization to help couples get on the same playing field.
Yeah. If only that was that easy.
I'm just saying, you might have a line there. I mean, I
remember a few years back, probably 20 years ago, that there was one trainer that was out there that was teaching partner tactics.
Yes, there still is.
But he really marketed towards spouses.
Yep.
And I think that's a good niche to be out there. Because you ever try to teach your wife to shoot, it's the rare wife that will take that training from a husband. Yeah, it really is. You can be the best trainer in the world, but your wife just looks at you and goes, "This is the guy whose underwear I brass knuckle into the hamper every week." I'm not listening to this.
Right. Yeah, no shit, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I have a real good friend, retired FBI agent, top firearms instructor. I used to have very few people in the bureau that I would call with questions. He was one of them. And then we'd get in arguments over the best, 223 bullet weight for a 1-9 twist out of a, 15-inch barrel or 14-inch barrel or 16-inch barrel. That's the kind of ridiculous esoteric conversations we'd have. And when his son got to a certain point teaching him how to shoot, he says, dude, you got to take my kid out and run him for a day. He could teach the kid everything I could teach him, but the kid looks at dad as dad, not as, a professional gun toter. He looks.
You got to be careful with you got to be careful with how those conversations between you and your buddy turn out. Before you know it, you'll have a podcast.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's the thing.
And nobody wants that, right?
I'll tell you what. This podcast has been an entree into so much cool shit. I can't even tell you. The argument could be made that this actually might have started over talking about teaching our kids how to shoot.
Yeah. And we never got onto the topic of Dan Brady, and we never got onto the topic of Oklahoma being given back.
Well, I don't know why you're saying never. The shit ain't nearly over yet.
Okay. Well, get to getting.
So since you brought up Dan Brady, I can only assume that Dan Brady thinks he has a job and a career and a life and all these things that he thinks about. And really, he's just like some sort of a cybernetic mind-controlled. You guys in the bureau have a remote control and you just make him do what he does. Is that the deal?
I would love to claim that was so. I will proudly say that I got my fingerprints all over Dan's early training and mentorship. But Dan is his own animal. And he is. I will say this about Dan: he's the only person I know that has epic tales about him and the things he's done that have names. Right? I mean, it's not just Dan did this in a bar. Oh no, there's snowblowers aloft, dodging bowling pin. That's another one for Dan. The deadly teapot, another good one. You got to ask him these stories. Felony super soaker. That was one of my personal favorites.
Wait, hold on. Let me hear felony super soaker.
You don't want to hear dowsing as a science. That's another good Dan story. Or trying to tackle TC. That's it. That was a good training tries to tackle TC.
The dowsers. You mean those people with the long rods that find water?
The forked stick that finds water. Yeah.
I have a funny story about them too.
Well, let's hear it.
So when I was an event manager for Killington Resort in Vermont, we had the National Society of the Dowsers in. And they're walking around with their sticks looking for water. 3 feet from a pond.
Did they find any? That's the key.
So there's a snowmaking pond, and I'm walking out there with my like banquet server friends and shit, and we're like giving them cocktails and whatever the fuck. And I'm like, hey, so what are y'all doing anyway? And I have a Peruvian kid working for me, and the guy goes, we're looking for water. And this kid goes, I'm like, no. Like, don't say it. He goes, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's over there. I'm like, oh God, no. Yeah, that happened.
Okay,
Yeah.
all I'm hearing is that episode 2 with TC Fuller needs to include Dan Brady.
Yeah.
It kind of does, because he has his own take on things like snowblowers aloft, or felony super soaker. But he's wrong. He's biased in his storytelling. I was there.
Yeah.
And,
So now I'm. What's coming to my mind is a late week special edition of the podcast that involves a liquor of choice and cigars.
All the way around.
Yep. Story time with TC and Dan Brady. Yep.
They're good. But I will say this about that. Dan has come a long way in his firearms progression. He is an outstanding instructor in his own right now. And God knows he paid the price to get there. I mean, because when he started, he wasn't there. But Dan was one of those guys that, as you know, different students have different ways of learning. Candy, I know you've lived this reality. Mm-hmm. There's a growing body of research in the educational literature that clearly demonstrates a different way of meaning making that's gender based. There's a growing body of how people gender identify and how they learn. Dan was one of those guys that when he showed up at the police academy in Vermont 20 plus years ago, when I first met him, that, he'd just come out of the Corps, a grunt in the Corps, could do no wrong, didn't need a parachute to jump out of a plane, and he could shoot. So to get his attention, you couldn't just reason with him. You couldn't speak to him like a mature adult. What had to happen was a metaphorical beatdown on the range to really show him, look, you don't know what you're doing. You can yank the trigger and you can lay down a base of fire. Plunging fire is not a thing with handguns. Okay. You can't do that in the civilian law enforcement world. And to Dan's credit, once you got his attention, then you had his attention, and he has dedicated a significant amount of time and treasure in the intervening decades to become a very, very knowledgeable and skilled instructor. So I love giving him a hard time, because he's Irish, and he's a goofball and a former Marine, but that I can't take anything away from the guy. You chose well when you had him on your show.
I'm just picturing. So for those that really don't know, if you've never seen Pittsford, Vermont, or if you've never seen the police academy at Pittsford, Vermont, which I have, I fixed y'all's dishwasher, as a matter of fact. Fucking been in the place, right? Yeah. Been there, solid. It kind of looks, the police academy in Pittsford, Vermont, looks a little bit like a horror movie.
No, yeah, you could film a remake of The Shining in that joint.
I mean, them fucking buildings are old as shit. When I was in there working in the hospitality business, working on commercial kitchen equipment, and I was like, "Where's the breaker for all this shit?" And they're like, "Excuse me."
Stick a fork in that socket and follow the smell of smoke.
Like, dude, this is a commercial building. What are you talking about? They're like, I don't know. We just assume there's a hamster in the wall. If we stop throwing cheese down there, maybe that shit will turn off. Like, this place is old as fuck.
It's behind the door that leads to the basement that's marked by blood and some type of protective magic and runes.
Breathing, right? It's going in and out.
Yeah,
slowly. Yeah,
yeah. We don't go down that hall.
That's right.
And there's two hippies that run the kitchen in that joint, right? like straight up deadhead hippies that run a kitchen in that place. And it's on the only road in Pittsburgh that isn't Route 7, right? So there's Route 7 going north-south, and then there's, I believe, Academy Training Center Road or whatever the hell, the name of that thing is.
Yeah. Before you get to the thriving metropolis of Rutland.
Right. There's like a little pizza shop and shit. And I'm imagining that whatever had to be said to Dan Brady could be heard in the valley by the pizza shop with you screaming it at him from up there in the shining hills. That's what I'm picturing.
Well, I think and Dan might tell you the same thing. I think what really got his attention early on, this real quick story, is the trainee tries to tackle TC. We're doing this dictated training rotation where myself and a state trooper are both carrying paintball guns. Not paintball guns, but the marker cartridges, right? Or the pink detergent markers that we used to use fired by the pistol primers. And they're each given a couple magazines worth of these rounds, and they're notoriously inaccurate and feed terribly and what have you. And the trainees aren't given any guns, and they're told, look, you got to try and get up close enough to these guys using cover, concealment, and movement techniques to touch them. Right? Just touch them. Don't do anything else. Just get up there and tag them. And that's what you got to do. And you start like 50 yards away, and it's a forest, right? So there's trees and what have you. There's also snow on the ground. So, and we were given the instructions, look, if they're using the cover, don't hit them, throw a round at them there and there just to keep their heads down, but generally don't light them up. But if they get out of cover, do what you got to do. Okay. So the trooper, he goes, 25, 30 yards that way. I'm standing here, and Dan's in a group of 4 or 5, and they're told that if they get shot to stop and, lay down. So they're moving along, and the other kids, no military training, they're getting lit up. I'm popping them here and there. And Dan eventually gets to a point where he's probably 20 yards away, 25 yards away, but he's got a straight shot right at me. And I fire at him, and he sees my gun go to slide lock. So he knows I'm empty. And he gets this big grin on his face, like, you're mine now, right? And he charges. He comes out from behind that cover, and he goes full tilt. He's in snow, so it's slowing him down. And Dan will tell you, I believe, that he knew he might have a problem when he broke cover, and I was standing there holding my gun, and I just got a big smile on my face. Because I knew what he didn't know is that I practiced this sort of thing. So he's charging, and he's got to go 25 yards. Well, that's going to take him 3-4 seconds. Kent, What could you do with 3 or 4 seconds at an empty gun with magazines on your belt?
I'd empty that motherfucker again and give him another one.
Ding, 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 ding. And that is precisely what happened. I dumped that mag. I did a reload, come back out, and I mag dumped this poor kid. Well, that, of course, slows him up a little bit because now he's dodging because these things hurt, right? But he's still closing in. He's like, once committed, never falter. Marine Corps way, right? Well, then he's getting close to me. He finally lowers his head because I'm just tearing him up. I slide lock again. I dump the mag. I sidestep him as he goes by, and then I just light him up as he charges because, of course, he's head down. He's just like, I'm just like, and now I can't hit him anymore because I'm laughing so hard. He's rolling around on the ground all shot up. But I think that did a lot to get Dan's attention that I might want to listen to this guy and people like him going forward if I want to be that. And
I have heard that exact same story.
Oh, did he? Did he tell you that story?
That's an awfully, one of these like awesome friendship level stories is a true story. When 2 dudes tell it to you 4 months apart, and that shit's like 90% the same story.
Well, it was a memorable moment. I laughed. I mean, to this day, I laugh about it because he knew he had me. He just knew it at a molecular level. I was like, I am going to flatten this instructor. I'm going to be a legend at the academy. I'm going to go back to the academy on raised arms. They're going to carry me around. I tackled an instructor.
And then the hope vanished from his eyes.
Like Kaiser frickin' Soze, man. Go on.
I love it.
Well, so, yeah, Dan's the only guy I know that has many an epic tale that has a title attached to it.
You never want to become a verb.
Right.
So, dude, I can't tell you how awesome this show has been. I have truly enjoyed having you on, TC.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It really has.
but we are well past that magic 90-minute mark. So as we go into the wrap up, we'd like to give you an opportunity to say any closing remarks, plug your company, where people might be able to find you on the internet and so forth. But sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. My overarching corporation is the HorusGroup.net. You can find some information on most of what I do on there. I didn't put the private investigation piece on there. I need to probably fix that at some point because I am a licensed PI in North Carolina. I don't do a lot of that work, but I am available for it. There's also theoldgrayman.com, where we have some information on that. That's mostly an informational site. And then, of course, there's a YouTube channel associated with that as well. Once again, the book is Reasonable, Justified, and Necessary. The name I used to publish it was Dan Bernoulli. You can find it on the website. You can find a link on my website. You can certainly find it on Amazon. You can find it on the publisher, Loose Leaf Law, and order it through them. As far as advice or a word of wisdom, as much as I can have, it's don't stop training. Keep pushing back that frontier of ignorance. I'm a resource. Kent's a resource. TJ's a resource. But I can't speak for you two gentlemen. But I am not the only resource. I'm more than happy to chime in within my bailiwick. I'm pretty knowledgeable. I've got 20 years of teaching federal agents how to carry a firearm and how to use it in the worst extreme, including 5 years at the FBI Academy. I have a masterclass IDPA shooter in ESP and SSP. I've shot national level competitions, regionals, states. I shot the Delaware one 20 years ago. 15 years ago, something like that, a long time ago. I shot the first 10 Smith & Wesson indoor nationals. I mean, I've shot a lot. I've shot guns at human beings in the Gulf War, and I shot guns at human beings in Afghanistan. So within those, sort of bailiwicks, if any of that can help you, let me know. I'm happy to do so. But there are a lot of good instructors out there, and you should definitely take advantage of it. If you carry a gun, learn to use it.
Well said, sir. So in typical show fashion, we have a couple of curveballs for you. The first one is recommended reading. What is a book that you recommend everyone read?
Well, I would say anything by Thomas Sowell right off the bat. If you need some intelligent reading, that's a really good way to go. I think that in the firearms training world, we tend to stick to firearms training books and in that sort of niche. And there's some really good books in there. But I think we also need to recognize, or we should recognize, that there is a lot of really good research out there in human movement science, adult education. I'm currently reading a book called Choke, and it's not a deviant sexual book. So Dan Brady, don't pick it up for that reason. It's about choking in sporting events or in high pressure situations, right? Well, think of a high pressure situation worse than having to use a firearm in self-defense. I picked up a bad habit in graduate school of reading multiple books at once. So I'm currently reading a book by Thomas Sowell. I'm reading Choke. I'm reading The War of the Flea, which is about guerrilla warfare. And I do this. I write all over my books and I put notes, and it just gets a little out of hand. Those would be the books I would recommend right now today, as the ones that I'm reading and I think you should consider.
Awesome. All right. And second question is, what is your charity of choice?
Well, I would have to say charity of choice for me would be the American Cancer Society. Cancer took my mom when I was 10 after a 3-year fight. And then it tried to kill my wife when she was 29 and when she's 30 and our son was 3 months old. So fortunately she won her fight. But it is not a lot of fun watching anybody go through that. And I dare say that very few people that I've ever met haven't had that disease touch their lives in some way, shape, or form. So if there is any charitable donations to be made, I'd like to see them go there.
Absolutely, man. So as is customary, we like to create a shirt on the fly inspired by our guests. And if you visit the Teespring store, and you will see a new shirt entitled Camel Spider Fighter, inspired by our one and only TC Fuller. All proceeds from the sale of the TC-inspired Camel Spider Fighter shirt will be donated to the American Cancer Society at the end of this year. So,
Excellent.
TC, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Once again, it has been an absolutely fantastic show. Kent often says that, one of the greatest things that we can give anybody currently, or one of the most precious commodities that we have, is time. And you have certainly given us plenty of yours, but we look forward to more with you as we schedule you for a second show. But with that, Kent, take us home, buddy.
Yeah, man. I'll give it to you. I say this shit on the range all the time, right? The most valuable commodity a man can give another man is his time, and I thank you so much for yours.
My pleasure.
There. Woo! We hit it. Let's see what other Green Mountain Defense hackies.
I'm not the best at quoting people, a la Tim Kelly's shirt.
Oh my God, that's a funny story. He fucked up Tim Kelly's phrase. Tim Kelly has a catchphrase. He fucked it up and put it on a t-shirt.
Whatever.
Hey, he said he's a Letterkenny fan. That's an episode, right?
Hey, Tim's just gonna have to change his catchphrase. It's just the way this goes.
But so real quick, guys. If you're looking for more cerebral content, if you're looking for more of this kind of stuff, this is TC didn't talk once this evening about the Glock versus the SIG versus the whatever. I have a feeling he gives a fuck, right? I don't think he cares at all. Check out the Gray Man. Check out all his stuff. Check out the Horus Group. Go support him. The unfortunate truth in today's day and age is the fact that likes, comments, shares, and subscriptions are currency. So if you'd like to help us fight the bullshit and we're under a pile of it, go to his pages and do the things with the clickies and the buttons to help him get his voice out there, because that stuff really matters, right? Here we have an honest to God SME in a couple topics, published author, a doctor, for Christ's sakes. I mean, I don't know. Who do you want to see their YouTube channel succeed? That gentleman, or Russia Patriot 327 at Yahoo or whatever the fuck? I don't know. It's just scary to think about. So that being said, if you guys want to support us and the fact that we're still kicking, right, 75 episodes and counting, greenmountaindefense.com/affiliate-links if you're going to buy gun-related stuff anyway, or medical-related stuff anyway, or books or whatever. If you go to that website, you can find a way to buy those things and still support our show. Perfect example being you could find TC's book listed in our recommended resources stuff coming up in a week or so, and that'll be on an Amazon link through our webpage where you can give us a little help for helping TC. Pretty neat. The truth is we give this away for free. Like, we're giving away the cow without you buying the milk or whatever the deal is. There's no Patreon here. Nobody's paying per episode. Nobody's doing any of that kind of stuff. This will be on the airwaves forever, or until the communists take it off, at which point TC, TJ, and I will be carrying various rifles outside of the airwave radio stations trying to get it back on. That'll be a whole nother show. Point being, I mean, all we're asking for is that if you can think of us in some way to help us, please do so. Share this content if you found it valuable. Like, favorite, subscribe, do all that stuff for us as well. I'd be so honored if you'd join me for a training class. greenmountaindefense.com/training is where you can find all that information. There's like 6 things I do pretty well on planet Earth. Shooting handguns is one of them. I only teach 2 of them, so you might as well let me help you with one. So that's it, right? Get out there and help me with that. And if you find yourself in a place where I am not and you want training, I shit you not, I promise you, I do this a lot. Number 1, I'll come to you. Number 2, I will find you somebody. I have a whole list of recommended training. I do a lot of selling other people's content and curriculum. It's a personal point of pride for me. So I'm just going to throw out a couple names. Number 1, obviously, Apache Solutions, Tim Kelly and the boys down there in the North Carolinas. Scotty Cronin in Ohio, Phil Groff. How much more serious could I be than to say this about somebody who's 35 minutes northeast of me? Go train with Phil Groff. Go train with Sam DeSimone, who's an hour and a half north of me. So that would be Vigor Training and Evolution Training Solutions here in Pennsylvania. Go train with Ashton Ray from 360 Performance here in Pennsylvania. My goodness, go train with Scott Jedlinski. Go train with Tim Herron. Go train with Billy Rapier. Check our hosting out. If we're hosting people that you're interested in, please participate in that. And failing all of that, if you just have a question, my no shit real deal personal cell phone number and email address are listed on the website. I will help you. I promise. Just be deserving of that help, pay it forward, and treat us like human beings, and we'll do the same to you. So if you're in Palo Alto, California, and you need a gun class, I'll find you somebody. And then I'll try to recruit them to come to America. But before that, I will find them for you, okay? So greenmountaindefense.com/training, Kent@greenmountaindefense.com. And what the hell's the email for the podcast, TJ?
Sling'Nledpodcast@gmail.com.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one. I check that inbox too. It beeps up here with all the rest of them.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, folks. As always, gentlemen, it's a pleasure doing this show with you. Kit, love you, buddy. Folks, that does it for us here this week. We look forward to seeing you guys in the future. Until then, take care of each other. God bless you all, and get out and shoot.